In Palestine, at least 12 civilians were killed, including children, and others were wounded during the early hours of this Saturday. In Guatemala, there is expectation over the inauguration of Bernardo Arévalo as the 52nd president after a month of protest against the country's attorney general. In Yemen, United States and United Kingdom carry out airstrikes for a second night in a row. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from TeleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. New Israeli bombardments on the Gaza Strip leave dozens of civilians dead, while communication services remain cut off for the second day in a row. Disregarding the genocide case filed against Israel by South Africa before the International Criminal Court, Israel carried out new attacks on towns of Khan Yunis, Deir al-Balah and al-Suwaida, in addition to the al-Nusayrat and al-Bureij camps. Also, in Gaza City, civil defense teams managed to recover the bodies of 20 Palestinians killed in an airstrike on a house in Darash neighborhood. After 99 days of siege, the number of people killed has risen to 23,700, plus over 60,000 wounded. 70% of the victims are women and children. At the same time, at least 12 civilians were killed, including children, and others were wounded during the early hours of this Saturday. The deaths followed an Israeli airstrike targeting a tent house displaced people east of the city of Rafah in the southern Gaza Strip. St. Vincent and the Grenadines joined a bloc supporting South Africa's lawsuit against Israel for genocidal actions in Gaza. The government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, by means of a statement, affirmed that the aggression in Gaza must be stopped and a ceasefire implemented immediately to contain the humanitarian crisis that the actions of the occupying forces have caused in Palestinian territory. Likewise, it also stated that sending supplies to Israel and its allies make nations complicit in genocide and its consequences. On Saturday, thousands of people gathered in the Indonesian capital to attend a demonstration in solidarity with Palestine. The rally took place in front of the U.S. Embassy in downtown Jakarta and gathered around 5,000 people. The demonstrators dressed in black and white, holding posters saying "Boycott Israel" and "Ceasefire now," demanding that Israel stops its ongoing war crimes. Indonesia, the world's most populous Muslim majority nation, has long been a strong supporter of Palestinians and does not have formal diplomatic relations with Israel. Also in South Korea, people have taken to the streets in support of the Palestinian cause. Under the slogans "Ceasefire" and "Free Palestine," people have expressed their condemnation of the continuous bombings and ground attacks by the Israeli occupation forces against the civilian population in the Gaza Strip. Thus, South Koreans have joined the Voices to the World, advocating for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. In the United Kingdom, people demonstrated in London in support of the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. On the 99th day since the beginning of the Israeli aggression against Gaza, demonstrators gathered in the center of London in rejection to the violent acts perpetrated by Israel. The protest was led by social movements and citizens who called for a humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza while rejecting the US and UK attacks on Yemen. The demonstrations took place under heavy security measures with the involvement of some 1,700 policemen to maintain order and direct the London March.
Our government needs to recognize that what is happening in Gaza is a genocide and to call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire.
We're here to show our leaders and our politicians that we are in a democracy and they don't speak for us. when they decide not to back a ceasefire, when they decide to continue to export arms to Israel, when they decide to drop airstrikes on Yemen. Those are not decisions that speak for us, and I'm here to voice that frustration.
And I think in years to come, it's going to be one that a lot of people are kicking themselves and saying we should have been on the right side of history back then. So I quite frankly want to be on the right side of history now.
Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. In Guatemala, there is expectation over the inauguration of Bernardo Arévalo as the 52nd president after months of protests against the country's attorney general. On Friday, social organizations from rural regions announced they are planning a sit-in in front of the public ministry next Sunday to support the inauguration of President-elect Bernardo Arévalo. They are also planning to hold a day for prayer for peace and democracy in Guatemala. The presidential inauguration comes after months of protest in which indigenous peoples and social movements demanded that Attorney General Consuelo Porras respect the vote cast in last August 20th election. Heads of government, high-ranking officials, foreign ministers and diplomats from more than 60 countries will arrive today in Guatemala for the inauguration tomorrow of President-elect Bernardo Arévalo. The President of Paraguay, Santiago Peña, arrived the day before as scheduled by the National Air Force runway and was received by the local foreign minister Mario Bucaro. According to the agenda, this Saturday it is expected the arrival of the King of Spain, Felipe VI, and the President of Honduras, Xiomara Castro, of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, and Chile, Gabriel Boric, among other political leaders. Peru's Court of Appeal has revoked a ban for international traveling imposed on Popular Force Party President Ms. Keiko Fujimori. The judiciary decided to revoke the 36-month travel ban imposed on Fujimori for her alleged involvement in the cocktails case. The ruling states that the measure is unnecessary given that the present rules of conduct are kind of parole. The prosecutor's office is asking for 30 years in prison for Keiko, daughter of former President Alberto Fujimori. She's been accused of appropriating millions received as electoral contributions by businesses and of obstructing justice. In Mexico, the Zacatecas prosecutor's office has confirmed the finding of 10 corpses in a clandestine grave located in the vicinity of the municipality of Luis Moya in the southeast region. The finding was made during a search operation led by a brigade made up of military and National Guard agents. The search operations was in keeping with the agreements reached between the government of Zacatecas and groups of relatives of missing persons. The authorities said the bodies were not all in the same condition. In some cases, there were only skeletal remains. Now, forensic teams are carrying out the necessary tests to promptly identify the bodies. In dozens of cities across Brazil and around the world, bicycling enthusiasts, street artists and feminist activists came to the streets on Friday to honor the Venezuelan artist Julieta Hernandez, who was murdered in Brazil while on cycling journey to her mother's home for Christmas. Our reporter Brian Meyer has more.
On Friday night, bicyclists, street artists and feminist activists came out in 52 Brazilian cities and 9 other countries around the world to remember Julieta Hernandez, a Venezuelan clown and street artist who traveled from town to town by bicycle performing shows for children, who was brutally murdered in Amazonas while cycling towards Venezuela to visit her family for Christmas.
Julieta era uma artista de rua, bonequeira.
Julieta was a street artist. She made dolls, a clown. She made a singer and dancer. She made this doll for me. It's my clown character, made by her hands. What happened was heartbreaking, but we will continue to get stronger working collectively.
Hernandez went missing on December 23rd and her body was found by police on January 5th. 2 suspects have been arrested, a couple that invited her to sleep in their house after she couldn't find a hotel room in the town of Presidente Figueiredo, Amazonas. On January 10th, they found her bicycle and musical instruments.
We believe that oppression against women happens around the world as a product of capitalism, and what happened to Julieta wasn't an isolated incident. We are here to fight against feminicide and against this society that oppresses and exploits women. That's why we are on the streets today. Julieta, presente.
Organizers of the demonstration in Recife wrote, "May her life inspire everyone to fight for the right of the entire population to travel freely wherever it wants to, especially women." Brian Mir, TeleSUR, Recife.
In Colombia, at least 33 people died and over 30 were injured after a landslide in the northwestern state of Choco. The disaster occurred on Friday afternoon near the town of Carmen de Atrato, resulting in the closing of the road that covers the route from the city of Medellin to Quibdó. In the images shared on social networks and television channels, the destroyed cars can be clearly seen in the middle of heavy mud. According to the authorities, several landslides have made it difficult for rescuers and firefighters, which has led rescue forces to request the assistance of helicopters to relieve the work. Concerning the tragedy in the department of Choco, Colombia, its governor made statements regarding the recovery of bodies and assistance to the wounded at the scene.
We have already set up the unified command post in the department and have started the coordination and dialogue with the National House of Risk Management. All the national and regional authorities are already coordinating and carrying out actions to achieve the recovery of bodies and immediate attention to the injured in Antioquia and Choco departments' health systems. Our priority is to ensure that our actions save as many lives as possible and to bring the injured together with their families.
The World Meteorological Organization WMO says 2023 has been the hottest year on record, but that 2024 could bring even higher temperatures. On Friday, the WMO and the United States National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, agreed with the Copernicus Climate Change Service on an increase in the global average temperature close to the limit of 1.5 degrees Celsius. These organizations said El Niño weather pattern usually has a greater impact on temperatures. However, they predict 2024 to be even more warmer. WMO emphasized that climate change is the greatest challenge facing humanity for the changes it can bring about. In Japan, the death toll from last January 1st earthquake has risen to 220. Japanese broadcaster NHK reported Saturday that the death toll following the powerful earthquake and a series of aftershocks that hit Japan Ishikawa Prefecture on New Year's Day now stands at 220. Another 1,014 people have been reported injured. Also, the number of houses that have been partially or completely destroyed as a result of the Noto Peninsula quake was also updated to 11,286. Moreover, there are over 32,000 households without electricity and over 56,000 without water. This has been the most powerful quake to hit the Noto Peninsula since records began in 1885. On Saturday in Ukraine, the Russian armed forces launched an attack with hypersonic weapons against the military-industrial complex. The offensive was carried out with long-range precision weapons using the Kinzhal hypersonic missile system. The Russian authorities confirmed damages to the production centers of projectiles, gunpowder, and unmanned aerial vehicles which were produced in these facilities. Explosions were also reported in several cities such as Kyiv, Poltava, Sumy, Cherkasy, and others. In China's Taiwan region, the ruling party candidate Lai Ching-te won Saturday's election with more than 40% of the votes. Lai Ching-te, candidate of the Progressive Democratic Party, has won the elections held this Saturday to become the next leader of the island, obtaining more than 40% of the votes. Shortly after knowing the results, Lai assured that his priority as leader of the island is to maintain peace and stability on both sides of the Taiwan Strait and to keep the status quo in accordance with the constitutional system of China's republic. According to his statements, future government's appointments will include officials from other parties with the promise of giving priority to issues that have the consensus of the island's political forces. China's army has issued a warning against any attempt to promote Taiwan's independence. Chinese officials said they will remain on high alert at all times and will take all necessary measures to defend China's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Beijing also accused the United States of steering military security problems between the two countries and urged the United States to cease its provocations by sending military ships and aircraft near Taiwan. China's Defense Ministry spokesman Chang urged the United States to create favorable conditions for a healthy and stable development of military relations between the two countries. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news, coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with TeleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. United States and United Kingdom launched airstrikes for second consecutive night against Yemen. Yemeni authorities reported that the attack targeted the Al-Dalaimi military base near the airport of the city of Sana'a. Defense agencies specified that Washington used over 100 guided munitions to attack more than 60 targets in 16 different locations throughout the country. Officials also indicated that the cities affected by U.S. bombings are Sana'a, Al-Hudaydah, Damar, and Sada. The government of Venezuela has issued a special communique condemning the attacks by the United States and its Western allies against Yemen. The statement reads, "The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela categorically condemns the bombing of Yemen, carried out by the U.S., the United Kingdom and other countries, an illegal action in violation of international law that only contributes to further destabilization in the region. Furthermore, Venezuela insists that the only way to guarantee peace and stability in the Middle East is through the cessation of the genocide in the Gaza Strip carried out by Israel, as well as accomplice with all United Nations resolutions for the establishment of a free and sovereign Palestinian state." And finally, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela urges the international community to exert pressure measures for the restoration of international law and justice in the area, avoiding an escalation of the conflict caused by the Israeli barbaric policy in Palestine. Cuba's Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez condemned the attacks by the United States and its allies against Yemen territory. Through his account on social network X, the official expressed, "They condemned military attacks by the United States and NATO allies in Yemen in violation of international law. Acts of this nature encourage genocide in Gaza." In the sense, Cuba reiterated their call for an immediate ceasefire in the Palestinian enclave. At a meeting of the United Nations Security Council on Friday, Russia's ambassador before the United Nations said the attacks by the United States and its allies on Yemen do not fall on the category of self-defense and can only contribute to the expansion of the conflict in the region.
Mr. Chairman, despite the claim of our Western colleagues, these massive attacks by the United States and Great Britain on the territory of Yemen have nothing in common with the exercise of the right to self-defense under Article 51 of the UN Charter. Article 51 does not apply to commercial achievement. The right to self-defense cannot be exercised to ensure freedom of maritime transport. Our American colleagues are well aware of this fact.
Meanwhile, China's representative to United Nations called on the United States and the United Kingdom not to engage in reckless military maneuvers that could lead to the further escalation of the conflict in the Red Sea and the Middle East.
The Middle East region is already on the brink of extreme danger. The last thing we need at this point is reckless military adventures. The first thing we need is calm and restraint to avoid further expansion of the conflict. We urge the parties, especially the major countries with the greatest influence, to abide by the UN Charter and international law, to maintain a steer towards dialogue and consultation, and to make concrete efforts to maintain peace and stability in the Red Sea and the Middle East.
In the United States, citizens marched in the streets to demonstrate their support for Yemen and Palestine. The protesters gathered outside the building that houses the permanent mission of Yemen to the United Nations in New York. The crowd spoke out against the actions of President Joe Biden and his administration in relation to the Israeli aggression in Gaza and the recent attacks on Houthi ground positions in Yemen. Citizens accused the president of genocide while demanding to stop U.S. aid to Israel. In this context, in Tehran, capital of Iran, citizens support the Houthis with mobilizations after the attacks of the United States and the United Kingdom. The demonstrators expressed slogans and prayers in support of Yemen. "O Yemen, the hero, we support you," and "Death to the United States," as expressed by the demonstrators. The demonstrators also said that the Arab countries should continue their struggle against the oppressors and follow Yemen. Resistance groups in Iraq attack U.S. bases illegally established in that territory. On Saturday, the Iraqi resistance reported at least 130 attacks against Washington's command post at Conigo oil field in northeastern Syria. In response to some 53 actions targeting Iraqi territory and another 77 against Syrian forces. In this context, the Iraqi resistance also attacked the Israeli base in solidarity with the cause of the Palestinian people. We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok as well. For TeleSUR English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.